The sun hung low in the sky, casting a golden hue over the sprawling fields of Cedar Creek Ranch. The crops swayed gently in the evening breeze, whispering secrets of a harvest soon to be. But today, something stirred in the air, something heavy and foreboding. At the heart of the ranch stood old Tom Walker, his hands calloused from years of toiling the land. His face bore the weather-worn marks of a man who had seen his share of storms, both in the sky and on the ground. Today, an unsettling tension tightened in his chest as he squinted toward the horizon. The rumble of engines grew louder, pulling him from his thoughts. A moment later, dust clouds billowed into the sky, swallowed by a chorus of growling motorcycles. The red machines gleamed in the twilight, a menacing row of leather and steel, far from the rustic charm of the ranch. As Tom's heart raced, a knot formed in his stomach. He had heard whispers through the grapevine, grim tales of the motor crew, a gang known for claiming territory, intimidating and leaving destruction in their wake. They weren't just riders, they were a force, looking to dominate and exact control, exploiting fear like a weapon. And now they were coming for him. Tom squared his shoulders, his steadfast gaze resting upon the advancing threat. He could almost hear the warnings echoing in the back of his mind. "You can't stand against them, Tom." But that's not who he was. His father had taught him about the land, about standing up for what was right, about the spirit of resilience that throbbed like a heartbeat beneath the soil. He wouldn't cower, not here, not now. The bikes roared to a halt just beyond the sagging wooden fence of the ranch. A swarm of leather-clad riders dismounted, towering figures draped with tattoos and defiance. Their laughter rumbled through the air, laced with a sinister undertone. One of them, a brawny figure with a scar running across his cheek, stepped forward, smirking at the sight of Tom, who stood like a lone oak tree amidst chaos. Well, what do we have here? An old man playing farmer." The scarred rider sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. The gang laughed, their voices like knives slicing through the evening serenity. Tom held his ground, his spine straightening, his heart pounding fiercely in rhythm with his resolve. "This is my land," he said, his voice steady like an anchor amidst the storm. The laughter died down, replaced by an unsettling silence. The gang's amusement faded, replaced by a weighty tension. Tom's eyes bored into the scarred man's, challenging him, daring him to flinch. It was an act of bravery that startled even him, as adrenaline coursed through his veins, igniting an ancient fight-or-flight instinct. The scarred rider's mouth twisted into a cruel grin. "You think you can just turn us away? This place looks ripe for a claim. You could have a better life, you know." His tone was slick, coated with false sympathy. Contrast that with Tom's own life, a steady rhythm built over decades of sweat, grit, and countless sunrises. He had watched the seasons change and the crops flourish. This was his legacy, a sprawling testament to years of hard work. "I don't want your kind of help. I've built this from nothing." A ripple of tension spread through the gang. The air hung thick with anticipation as they exchanged glances, their amusement giving way to contemplation. Should they draw the line here or push forward? The scarred rider stepped closer, his body language shifting, becoming predatory. "You're just a dot in this world, old man. You've got no idea who you're messing with." Tom squared his jaw, adrenaline buzzing under his skin. "Maybe, but I'd rather face hell standing than live in fear kneeling." The biker hesitated, caught off guard by Tom's unwavering gaze. In that pregnant silence, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting shadows like fingers stretching across the land. Another rider spoke, breaking the tension with a challenge. "What's he doing? You really want to risk it all for an old man?" But something shifted in the atmosphere. Tom could feel it, an undercurrent of uncertainty grazing the gang. He had seen enough of their kind to recognize fear when it stood behind bravado. A very real hardness sharpened his resolve, and in that moment it wasn't just the land he was protecting, it was the very essence of who he was. Emboldened, he stepped forward, the distance between them closing. "You think you're tough?" He paused, letting his words echo, challenging the man. "You're nothing but bullies preying on the weak, but look around. This isn't just land to me. This is family history. You'll have to tear it from my cold, dead hands, and I promise you'll remember this day." The scarred rider's smile faltered, the laughter drained from the air, replaced by a charged silence. "You chose this, old man," he spat finally. And with that, chaos erupted. The gang surged forward, a frenzy of violence and chaos that lunged toward Tom like a ravenous beast. But he stood firm, rooted in place like the oak trees that lined his fields. As the first punch flew, driven by blind aggression, Tom ducked, the world momentarily slowing around him. Years of labor had hardened his body and sharpened his instincts. He aimed a powerful jab into the rider's midsection as he spun, catching another blow aimed for him. Fists flew, but Tom was relentless, fueled by a surge of adrenaline and desperation. He was fighting not just for the ranch, but for everything that made him who he was. With every swing, he felt the resolve of generations dancing through his veins. Memories of his father clenched tight in his heart, whispers of wisdom guiding his movements. The world around him blurred, filled with shadows of chaos motorcycles, leather, and roaring voices. But in the center there was Tom, fierce and unwavering. The fight spilled beyond the confines of the ranch. Shouts punctuated the air as the once comradely laughter twisted into cries of pain. Fists connected with flesh, shouting erupted, and the fight turned primal, raw, and unapologetic. Incited by fear and desperation, Tom fought with every ounce of strength he had, unyielding and resolute. Through the haze, he caught glimpses of the gang, their usual confidence faltering with each exchange. They were not untouchable, not invincible. They were simply men with flesh that could be struck and wills that could be bent. The chaos spread, a whirlwind of desperation and fury, each punch a statement against the unraveling threat. Grunts echoed alongside shouts as Tom noted the shifting tide. The gang was faltering and they could sense it too. One of the riders shouted, but the disorder had taken root and the reality of the challenge was becoming clearer. From the periphery, Tom noticed another rider sneaking around, swift and shifty, trying to flank him. The reflection in the sunset glinted off something lethal, a weapon. In a heartbeat, he pivoted, fear crashing through him as instinct kicked in, driving him to charge at the man. No! Adrenaline surged through his veins, and with a powerful thrust, he deflected the weapon, sending it skidding away into the dirt. The memory of the ranch, the love for his land, surged within him, making him feel larger than any gang. The fight began to unravel for the motor crew. One collapsed, a blow too much. Another stumbled, uncertainty flooding his eyes. Tom, battered but unbroken, stood like a sentinel, reminding them all that even the smallest among them could stand tall against a storm. In their retreat, the remaining members of the motor crew turned, realizing this wasn't the easy grab they thought it would be. As they hopped on their bikes, a new sense of respect hung in the air, intertwined with shame, anger, and disbelief. Their laughter had turned to whispers as they revved their engines, the clamor fading into the past, echoing into the setting sun, leaving Tom standing in the aftermath. Breathless, heart racing, Tom felt the weight of 1,000 moments crash around him. The sun dipped lower, turning the world into silhouettes, shadows dancing on the land that was still his. He had held his ground, faced the tempest, and in that split second he recognized. Strength didn't come from size, it came from resolve. As silence fell over the fields, Tom stepped back, breath shaky but heart steady. He looked at the beaten earth, the dust settling, the remnants of the battle clinging to the air. The ranch stood solid, a testament to the fight he had just won. Resilience echoed through the air, a promise that some things are worth preserving, and in that twilight glow, he knew he had forged a legacy, not only of land but of courage. And standing alone amongst the remnants of chaos, Tom Walker felt an undeniable truth. No one could take away what was deeply rooted in his soul. Not today, not ever. The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting fiery hues across the sky, a beautiful backdrop to a brewing storm. The wind rustled the golden wheat fields of Cedar Valley Ranch, whispering secrets of the past to anyone willing to listen. This land, rich and timeless, had belonged to old Eli Morgan for over 3 decades. Nestled in the heart of this rugged land, Eli had spent countless hours tending to his crops and livestock, each day blending into the next, a rhythm of hard work and dedication. But this evening felt different. An uneasy tension hung thicker than the impending clouds. As Eli raked his hands through the dust, wearing his faded blue overalls and an old straw hat, he heard a distant rumbling sound, one he had never anticipated. The ground trembled beneath his feet, not from a storm approaching, but from a gang of men on roaring motorcycles. Eli squinted toward the sound. Figures emerged through the haze, dark silhouettes against the fiery sky, clad in leather and arrogance. The motor crew. He had heard whispers about them, rumors of intimidation, violence, and a ruthless thirst for dominance. They threatened to take whatever they wanted, believing that fear would bend the strong. But Eli Morgan was not easily bent. The gang drew closer, a cloud of dust swirling in their wake, motorcycles gleaming like beasts ready to pounce. Eli stood rooted, a solitary figure against the chaos. Inside, his heart raced, a drum echoing in his chest, but he forced it down. Fear would not have a place in his mind today. When the lead biker, a hulking man with a scar that traced from his forehead down to his chin, stepped off his machine, Eli could sense the room go cold. The man swaggered toward him, the gang fanning out behind, each member a tower of bravado. "This is our territory now, old man," he said, voice low and menacing, cutting through the thick air. Eli's pulse quickened, but he stood steadfast, the weight of generations grounding him. "You're mistaken." His voice, steady and clear, rose above the impending chaos. The gang laughed, a cruel sound that echoed around the ranch, mingling with the wind. The leader mocked. His gang joined in, fingers tapping handlebars, eyes glinting with malice. To them, Eli was a mere inconvenience, a relic of the past they believed they could easily sweep aside. But Eli felt the strength of the soil beneath him, and the memories of hard days and sleepless nights surged through his veins. This was his life. He had tilled this earth, nurtured it, loved it. He replied, the timbre of his voice steadying like roots buried deep into the earth. The leader stepped closer, eyes narrowing. "You should be. We don't take no for an answer." Eli felt the tension twist like a sharpened blade, threatening to slice through the fragile air between them. He understood fear. Everyone does. It can paralyze you, make you weak. But he also knew that courage often meant standing firm against the storm, and inside him, the courage blazed like the setting sun. "You're not taking anything from me," Eli declared, steel weaving into his words. "You think you can roll in here and bully me?" A flicker of surprise crossed the biker's face, quickly replaced by rage. With a fierce shout, he lunged forward, fists raised. But Eli was ready. Years of working the land had taught him more than just farming. It taught him resilience and how to hold his ground against all odds. The first punch missed wildly as Eli sidestepped, adrenaline pumping through him. In that chaotic moment, he ducked and used the weight of his body to knock the biker off balance. The man stumbled, shock widening his eyes. Eli seized this tiny victory like it was a lifeline, daring the rest of the crew to join in. One of the gang members charged from the side, but Eli ducked low, feeling the rush of wind as a second rider barreled past him. Time seemed to freeze as he focused, each breath grounding him further in reality. Faced with their anger, he felt no fear. He ignited his inner strength and unleashed a flurry of retaliatory moves that stunned even him. Fists flew, bodies collided, and the previously relentless laughter turned into shouts of confusion and disbelief. Eli was no longer just a farmer. He was an immovable force, his body moving with purpose. Every impact felt like a statement. He was defending his ground, his home, and his way of life. Amidst the flurry of fighting, he caught glimpses of his ranch, the old barn where he had shared countless stories with his late wife, the fields where he had watched his children grow. Each memory fueled his resolve further. For them, he couldn't give in. Eli's fist connected with the lead biker's jaw, a satisfying thud that echoed through the evening air. The man staggered back, disbelief etched on his face. He gasped, wiping blood from his lips. "Courage," Eli replied, fire igniting deep within him. The crew, once a wall of aggression, was now faltering. Doubts crept in, and with each passing moment, their confidence slid away like the daylight fading into night. They exchanged wary glances, knowing they had underestimated the old man. With desperation creeping into their ranks, they shouted commands, urging each other to push harder to take what they came for. But Eli remained a steady force, holding the line, a testament to every struggle he had faced in his life. "You want this land, you'll have to earn it," Eli shouted defiantly. The chaos swirled around him, and with every punch, every shove, he felt the landscape of his life rise in defense. The old barn was more than wood and nails. It was his backbone, his anchor. Just as it seemed Eli could turn the tide, the leader regrouped, rallying his crew with a fierce shout. "We don't lose to anyone." They charged, a wave of anger and rage heading straight for him, but Eli stood firm, preparing to brace for the storm. This was not just a fight. It was a battle for his home, for his family's legacy, for the very land that had shaped him. With fierce determination, Eli stepped forward, blocking blows and dishing out his own, each movement fluid and focused. The battle was not just physical, it was raw emotion channeled into every strike and parry. Around him, the landscape blurred. The wind picked up, echoing the sound of his heartbeat in his ears. He could sense the fear creeping into the gang. They came at him relentlessly, but their strikes lacked depth, driven by desperation rather than purpose. In one swift movement, Eli ducked low and kicked out, catching the closest biker off guard. The man fell hard onto the dirt, winded. The gang's morale crumbled further. Their confidence faltered as they began second-guessing their own decisions. The leader, furious and desperate, lunged again, but Eli was ready. With a twist of his body, he sidestepped and delivered a swift punch that sent him sprawling to the ground. Eli shouted, voice rising above the tension. As the last few members of the crew hesitated, doubt danced in their eyes. Their resolve wavered. They were supposed to be tough, but facing this relentless storm of spirit, they realized the weight of their mistakes. Eli was no ordinary farmer. He was a warrior, a man who had carved his life out of the very earth beneath their feet. One shouted, scrambling back to their bikes, and the others quickly followed suit. They revved their engines, panic gripping them, and with one final glance back at the old man who refused to bend, they tore off into the distance like shadows retreating from the dawn. Breathless, Eli stood alone, the dusty remnants of the fight swirling around him. In that moment, he felt the weight of the world lift from his shoulders, replaced by the bittersweet taste of victory. He had defended not just his land, but his legacy. As the sun dipped below the horizon, bathing the ranch in warm, golden twilight, Eli took a moment to collect himself. The echoes of the battle faded away, leaving behind a quiet stillness. He was battered and bruised, but he was still standing. In the face of chaos, Eli Morgan had proven that courage doesn't always require a weapon. Sometimes, it lies in the strength to stand your ground, to fight for what you love, and to face the storms head-on. The fields would continue to thrive, whispering tales of bravery and resilience to the winds. He walked back towards the barn, heart still pounding but filled with hope. Tomorrow would come like it always did, and the sun would rise again over Cedar Valley Ranch, casting light on the legacy that would endure unbroken. Eli knew one thing for certain. The real strength lies not in the absence of fear, but in the ability to rise against it. In that moment, he felt not just like a farmer, he felt invincible. The sun hung low, casting an amber glow over the fields of Cedar Creek Ranch, where Eli Carter had spent the last 30 years of his life. He wiped the sweat from his brow, feeling the weight of each breath in the summer's heat. The land stretched for miles, a relentless sea of green and brown that he had nurtured with his own hands. It was more than just soil, it was his legacy. But as he walked the rows of corn, humming an old tune, a distant roar interrupted his tranquil daydream. Engines. He turned his gaze toward the horizon, and what he saw sent a chill down his spine. A formation of motorcycles tore into view, dark silhouettes cutting across the golden sky like clouds of impending thunder. Eli's heart pounded. The motor crew. He had heard the stories, tales of dread that twisted his stomach in knots. They were notorious for taking what they wanted, using fear as their fuel. And now, they were coming for his land. He thought of the sunrises he had shared with his late wife, the laughter of his children as they played among the rows of carrots and beans, all of it threatened by the approaching storm. Eli planted his feet firm in the earth, steeling himself for the confrontation he knew was imminent. The bikes roared closer, the sound growing louder, drowning out the usual peaceful chirping of crickets. Dust kicked up behind them, swirling like ghosts around the impending threat of chaos. As the lead motorcycle skidded to a stop at the edge of his property, 4 figures emerged, their leather-clad bodies oozing bravado and menace. "Look what we found," the leader called out, a beefy man with tattoos curling like smoke along his arms. He chuckled, his voice thick with scorn. The laughter from the others felt like knives slicing through the tranquility of the evening. Eli clenched his fists, but he refused to let fear take root. "You're not welcome here." "This is my home," he said, voice steady, though he felt the tremor of uncertainty within. "Oh, we're definitely welcome," the leader said, stepping closer with a swagger that reeked of entitlement. "You know how this works." Eli narrowed his gaze, the shadows of doubt lifting a little as resolve tightened in his chest. "There's nothing for you here but hard work." The men exchanged glances, and that small act of defiance ignited something within Eli. He wasn't just a farmer, he was a guardian of this land, a steward of its stories. One of the bikers piped up, stepping forward with a mocking grin. "Maybe not, but I'll die trying to protect my home," Eli replied, adrenaline pooling in his veins. The leader's expression darkened, eyes narrowing like a predator honed in on his prey. "You think you're tough, huh?" With that, he lunged forward, and the air crackled with tension as the others followed suit. Eli felt a rush of adrenaline pounding through him. This was not just a fight. It was a battle born from love, memory, and legacy. He dodged the first blow, feeling the wind rush past him as the fist barely missed his face. Thinking quickly, he pivoted and delivered a solid jab to the man's midsection. The leader staggered back, surprise flashing in his eyes. He bellowed, the swagger quickly fading from his voice. The other bikers surged forward, but Eli no longer felt afraid. With each punch and kick that came his way, something primal awakened within him. Years of labor had sculpted his body into something stronger than he appeared, a silent testament to dedication and resilience. Eli worked through the chaos like a seasoned dancer. He ducked, weaved, and struck with the force of a lifetime spent laboring upon this land. Every connection he made was infused with all the emotions, memories, and love he had for this homestead. Then, just when it seemed the tide might be turning in his favor, a flash of movement caught his eye. One of the bikers had slipped behind him, brandishing a chain with a snarling grin. Eli's instincts kicked in, and he turned just in time to deflect the swing, the chain clanging harmlessly against the metal of a nearby tractor. The gang member stumbled, his smirk quickly fading away. But there was no time for celebration. The leader regained his footing, fueled by anger and desperation. He howled. Eli's heart raced wildly, but fear refused to take root. He shouted, a raw power echoing in his chest, mixing with the adrenaline. The reality dawned on him. He was fighting for so much more than just land or crops. He was fighting for everything that made him who he was. They came at him from all directions, now swinging fists and flailing limbs. Each attack was wild and reckless, a clear indication of their panic. Eli ducked and dodged, striking back with strategic precision. He had spent too many years working the fields to let this band of thugs dictate the end of his story. Moments turned into what felt like hours, a wild blur of strikes and counters. For every punch Eli threw, he found himself fueled by memories, days spent harvesting vegetables, evenings under the stars with family, and the dream of leaving behind a legacy for his grandchildren. The gang seemed relentless. Sweat dripped down Eli's brow, but his resolve only hardened. With a deep breath, he focused entirely on the leader, who was scrambling to regain control of the situation. As the man lunged toward him again, Eli sidestepped, using the momentum to bring up an elbow into the leader's gut. The blow connected solidly, and the man fell to his knees, gasping for breath. Panting, Eli straightened, adrenaline coursing through every fiber of his being. This was his defining moment. Suddenly, glancing past the leader, Eli noticed something that sent a shiver down his spine. One of the gang members had pulled out a knife, glinting ominously in the fading light. As time slowed, Eli felt his heart race, the stakes rising higher than ever. He shouted, desperation spilling from his lips, but it was too late. The biker had advanced at a speed fueled by rage. In a split second, Eli acted on instinct. He stepped in close, closer than any fighter would dare, and grabbed the man's wrist, redirecting the force of the thrust so the blade missed him entirely and pierced the earth. With lightning reflexes, Eli disarmed him, wrenching the knife away and tossing it aside like a twig. Now it was his turn. Fueled by that moment of distraction, he turned back to the leader who had just managed to rise to his feet. With all the strength left in him, Eli struck hard and true, landing a punch that sent the man sprawling back, hitting the ground with a satisfying thud. The remaining crew hesitated, drawing back, uncertainty flooding their ranks. Eli stood tall, breathing heavily, his chest heaving as he faced the group, a lone defender against the storm. He shouted, voice ringing clear, "You wanted something." The gang members exchanged looks, and Eli could see the wheels spinning in their minds. They had come to claim a piece of him, only to find a man forged stronger than they could have ever imagined. A moment of hesitation turned into a chaotic retreat. They scrambled to their bikes, fear now tangible, chasing away whatever bravado they had brought with them. As their engines roared to life, the last thing Eli heard was their laughter dissolve into the distance, replaced by the steady chirping of nighttime insects. The weight of the air lifted, a calm falling like an embrace over the land. The adrenaline began to fade, leaving him staggering slightly from exhaustion. Eli ran a hand through his hair, breathing heavily as he glanced around his property. He could still smell the faint mix of sweat and dust in the air, remnants of the fight that had just unfolded. He had stood his ground, fiercely defending his legacy against a band of thugs who thought they could intimidate him. But in doing so, he discovered something deeper within himself, rooted in love and perseverance. The stars began to twinkle above, the first glimpses of a peaceful night sky breaking through the lingering clouds. Eli leaned against the weathered wooden fence, looking out over his fields now painted silver under the moonlight. Standing there, he understood that this moment had become a part of the land itself, a story carved into the very soul of Cedar Creek Ranch, a testament to the idea that standing against the tide of fear often reveals the warrior hidden within. Eli smiled softly to himself, knowing that he would always protect his home, and that sometimes strength is measured not by size, but by the depth of one's spirit. The air around him grew still, and with it came an overwhelming sense of peace. He turned slowly toward the house, ready to continue living out the tales that echoed through the fields, knowing his legacy would unfold in the hearts of those who would come after him. The fight was far from over, but for tonight there was victory, and it was sweet. The day started like any other at Cedar Valley Ranch. The sun peeked over the horizon, casting golden rays across the fields, illuminating the dew-kissed crops. Eli Carter, a farmer with thick, calloused hands, was already hard at work. He loved this land with all his heart. It was a bond forged through years of sweat and grit, every inch of earth telling a story, a legacy built by his father and handed down to him. But as Eli tended to his chores, a sound broke the morning calm, the distant roar of engines. His heart raced as the noise grew louder, a foreboding rumble that sent chills up his spine. He wiped his brow and squinted toward the road, where a cloud of dust loomed, growing larger by the second. When the first motorcycle burst into view, Eli's blood turned cold. It was a group he had feared, the notorious Motor Crew, a gang known for their aggressive tactics and ruthless demeanor. This was not just a few joyriders. This was a band of trouble that knew no limits. Their bikes roared to life as they closed in, a chorus of iron and bravado. At the head of the gang was a hulking figure, tattooed and intimidating, moving with the swagger of someone who believed he owned the world. Eli braced himself, the adrenaline coursing through his veins, battling the rising tide of fear threatening to drown him. As the gang rolled onto his property, they fanned out, each member dismounting with an overblown sense of importance. Eli stood his ground, hands clenched into fists, heart pounding like a war drum. The leader sneered, eyes glinting like knives. Eli felt the tension coil within him, but he refused to back down. His voice was strong, a defiant shout against the chaos cast by the roaring engines. The bikers laughed, a sound more menacing than humorous, echoing like thunder across the fields. One of them stepped forward, clad in leather, finger tracing the outline of a knife at his belt. "What are you gonna do about it?" Eli's fists tightened. He had planted more than corn. He had planted dreams, family, and a future. "You think you can come in here and bully me?" A flicker of surprise crossed the leader's face, quickly replaced by irritation. He strode forward, bending the air around him with a volatile energy. Regret. The word hung in the air, heavy like storm clouds. Eli felt a fire ignite in his chest. "I won't back down, not for you or anyone," he said, unwavering. With that, the leader lunged, the spark of violence igniting the air between them. Eli's instincts kicked in, adrenaline sharpening his senses. He sidestepped, feeling the rush of wind as the fist barely grazed him. In that moment, he didn't just feel fear. He felt a surge of courage that was born from years of fighting battles against storms, weeds, and the hardships of life. The gang surged forward, fists flying. Eli ducked and moved, weaving through the chaos, feeling the energy pulse around him. It was a frenzy of adrenaline, confusion, and raw emotion. He had no idea how many were coming for him, but he wouldn't let them overwhelm him. Eli dodged another punch, his body moving instinctively as he struck back with everything he had. His fist connected with one biker's jaw, sending him reeling back. The sound of the impact echoed in the still air, a moment of defiance that felt like a breath of fresh air. The leader shouted, scrambling to regain control, his earlier confidence crumbling before Eli's relentless spirit. Each move Eli made was fueled by years of labor, sweat from long days in the sun, and the love he held for every blade of grass, every dancing leaf. It was the anger mixed with fear for his home and family that drove him, propelling his fists like rockets. Just as he thought he had gained the upper hand, another biker caught him off guard, slipping in from the side. A chain flickered in the air, glinting menacingly. Eli's heart sank. This was getting serious. But deep down, he knew he couldn't allow fear to govern him. In a flash of motion, Eli stepped forward instead of back, grasping for the chain before it could wrap around him. With a twist, he pulled it from the biker's hands and the weapon clattered to the ground. Now disarmed, the biker stumbled, confusion turning to frustration. Eli turned to face the leader, who had regained his footing, eyes burning with anger. In a final burst of energy, Eli sprang forward, landing a powerful punch directly to the man's gut. The leader doubled over, the wind knocked from his lungs, a look of disbelief washing over his face. Around him, the other bikers hesitated. Their bravado was waning, the reality of the confrontation sinking in. They had come expecting an easy target, but Eli wasn't just a farmer. He was a warrior in a field of courage. Eli roared, action echoing from his core. "This is my land." The bikers shared a frantic glance as doubt swept through their ranks. The gang's confidence unraveled like loose threads, leaving them to question their chances. Suddenly, the leader scrambled back to his feet, his previous arrogance shattered. He shouted, panic in his voice, scrambling back to his motorcycle. Eli stood tall, breathing heavily, but the exhaustion didn't settle in just yet. He watched as the gang rushed back to their bikes, fear etched on their faces. As they revved their engines, the fear faded away into the distance. The hum of the motorcycles dissipated, leaving behind only the sound of crickets and rustling leaves. Eli's heart still raced, but he felt a profound sense of peace wash over him. He had faced down the storm, had stood his ground against those who meant to take what was his. A quiet strength filled the air around him, solidarity woven deeply into the earth beneath his feet. The golden sun dipped lower on the horizon, casting a warm glow across the ranch as Eli walked through the fields where he had fought for his legacy. Each step felt like a testament, a reminder that home is worth defending, that strength comes from within, and that standing your ground is sometimes the bravest thing one can do. This was his world, filled with love, memories, and dreams still waiting to bloom. The warmth of twilight wrapped around him like a blanket, and he knew deep down that he had emerged victorious, not just in a battle, but in reaffirming who he was. As he looked over the fields, catching the last shimmer of sunlight, he understood more than just his triumph today. He understood that courage isn't the absence of fear, but rather the decision to rise above it, to fight for what really matters. With the evening settling in like a quiet whisper, Eli took a deep breath, inhaling the salty, sweet smell of the farm, one worth fighting for, worth nurturing forever. He turned toward the house, ready to tell his wife of the day's events, knowing she would smile as she pressed a fresh pie into his hands, and together they would savor the sweetness of life, one harvest at a time. The world could test him, but for today, he had stood his ground. And in that victory, he found strength, a blue sky waiting just beyond the horizon. The sound of roaring engines shattered the early morning stillness at Cedar Valley Ranch. Eli Carter had just been enjoying his coffee on the porch while watching the sunlight spill over the horizon, painting the fields golden. The first sip carried with it a crisp promise of the day ahead, until that promise was drowned out by the heavy rumble of motorcycles. Eli's heart dropped. He had heard the whispers about the motor crew, a ruthless gang that terrorized local farms, extorting and bullying to get what they wanted. As he set his mug down, the air turned electric, tension pooling in his stomach. He shook his head, pushing the fearful thoughts aside. This was his home, and he wouldn't let anyone take it from him. He rose to his feet and walked to the edge of his property, where the gravel road cut through his fields like a serpent. As the dust cloud in the distance began to take form, the roar swelled. He could make out the silhouettes of several bikers, their black leather jackets glinting in the sunlight like menacing shadows. With each rev of the engines, Eli's pulse quickened. The gang members roared up to his gate and parked in a mess of chrome and leather, dismounting with a swagger that signaled trouble. There were 4 of them, each oozing bravado, but their leader caught Eli's eye, a mountain of a man with a scar running down his cheek, growling like an angry bull. The leader scoffed, strutting toward Eli, his gang forming a wall behind him. Eli squared his shoulders, standing tall despite the rising storm inside. "This is my land." The gang erupted into laughter, the sound sharp and hollow, echoing through the quiet of the ranch. "Look at him. You think you can just scare us off?" "This place looks ripe for the picking," sneered one of the bikers, stepping forward with a menacing glare. Eli felt a fire ignite within him. He'd spent years building this ranch, planting crops and creating a life. With a steady, calm voice, he said, "I won't let you take what isn't yours." The leader stepped closer, a twisted smile growing on his face. "You think you've got what it takes to stand up to us? You're just one old man." In that moment, something inside Eli shifted. Fear morphed into courage, solidifying like concrete. He wasn't just fighting for himself. He was fighting for a legacy, for years of backbreaking work that had gone into every inch of this land. "You've underestimated me," he replied, voice steady, eyes unwavering. The leader's grin faded slightly, replaced by a flicker of annoyance. Suddenly, with a roar that shattered the tension, the leader lunged forward. Eli reacted on instinct, sidestepping just in time to avoid the heavy fist that swung at him. The move was clumsy, fueled by rage, and Eli was quick to capitalize. Before the leader could regain his balance, Eli delivered a solid punch to his midsection, feeling the warmth surge through him as the man stumbled back. The gang gasped, momentarily taken aback. They had come expecting an easy target, but Eli wasn't just an old farmer. He was the keeper of his land, a warrior hidden behind sun-weathered skin. In that split second, the fight exploded into chaos. Bikers rushed at him from every direction, fists flying, while Eli ducked and weaved with a determination he hadn't known he possessed. Each hit he threw was a statement. "This is my home. You will not take it from me." He caught one biker off guard, delivering a potent jab that sent him sprawling to the ground. The rush of adrenaline filled Eli's veins with purpose, pushing him to fight harder, fueled by years of hard work and the love of his family and land. The leader shouted, scrambling to regain control of the chaos unfolding before him. Eli struck out again, dodging another blow, feeling the wind rush past him as fists flew. Sweat trickled down his brow, mixing with the dust from the ground. He was battling not just against them, but against fear itself, a tide that threatened to sweep him away. Then, just as Eli began to feel the tide turning in his favor, he saw a flash of metal. One of the bikers pulled out a knife, gripping it tightly as he advanced. Panic clenched at Eli's heart as adrenaline spiked. This was different. This wasn't just a brawl. Eli shouted, instinctively getting ready to defend himself. He could feel the air thickening, racing to catch up with the surging tension. But the biker charged forward, swinging the knife toward him. Eli acted on pure instinct, sidestepping just in time to avoid the bladed edge. The knife struck the dirt ground behind him, the impact sending a jolt through the earth. In one swift movement, Eli lunged to grab the biker's wrist, twisting it and forcing the blade out of his grasp. The knife clattered to the ground, and Eli turned to face the leader, who finally looked rattled. Eli yelled again, channeling every ounce of strength he had. The gang hesitated, and for a moment, Eli saw doubt flicker in their eyes. They had come looking for an easy score, but found a man who refused to be broken. The laughter faded, the confidence waned, and with it, the gang's numbers seemed to dwindle. With desperation clawing at their courage, they started to back away. One of the bikers shouted, scrambling toward their motorcycles. The leader surged forward, anger boiling in his veins, but Eli was ready. With a quick, powerful kick, he sent the leader tumbling to the ground once more, spitting dirt. Eli stood tall, still breathing heavily, heart pounding in his chest. The gang finally mounted their motorcycles in a frantic flurry. Engines sputtered to life in a cacophony of noise, and as they revved their engines, Eli shouted, "Get off my land!" The gang sped away, tires kicking up dirt as they vanished into the horizon, small specks against the vastness of the setting sun. Eli leaned against the fence, chest heaving as the sun dipped below the horizon. The warmth of victory coursed through him, mixed with exhaustion. He had protected his home, he had stood his ground. The dust settled in the calm that followed the storm, and with it came a clarity he hadn't known he needed. The battle had not just been physical, it had been a reminder of everything he had fought for: the love for his family, the grace of the land, and the courage that bubbles to the surface when faced with insurmountable odds. Eli took a deep breath, allowing the cool evening air to fill his lungs. The sun cast a golden glow across the fields, illuminating the path that led back to the house. He could hear the wind rustling through the crops, whispering stories of tenacity and resilience. He knew this wasn't the last he would hear from the motor crew. Their shadows lingered in the distance. But for tonight, he was the victor. He had fought, and he had embraced the warrior hidden within. As he made his way back to the house, thoughts of his late wife filled his mind. The nights spent on the porch, watching the stars emerge, dreaming of a better world. In that quiet serenity, Eli realized he wasn't just fighting for himself anymore. He was fighting for their legacy, for the generations to come. Tomorrow would bring a new day, new challenges, and perhaps even the motor crew again. But for today, Eli Carter found peace in victory. He had stood his ground, and in doing so, defined what it meant to truly be home strong, resilient, and fiercely unyielding. As the moon illuminated his farm, casting a silver glow over the fields, Eli smiled softly to himself. He knew that whatever came next, he would meet it head-on, standing tall as the guardian of Cedar Valley Ranch, ready to fight for what mattered most. And deep in his heart, he knew he would never allow fear to take root. The rumble of engines tore through the tranquility of Cedar Valley Ranch, a sound that felt alien in the quiet expanse of land where Eli Carter had spent his life. The sun hung high in the sky, painting the fields in lush greens and golds, yet Eli felt a shiver ripple down his spine. He set down his shovel, instinctively turning toward the gravel road, where a cloud of dust billowed ominously, followed by the growl of motorcycles. As he squinted into the distance, several dark shapes emerged, motorcycles, gleaming like predatory beasts, slicing through the air with a ferocity that sent a chill through him. The motor crew, he thought. He'd heard the stories around town, whispers of their destructive reputation. They showed up uninvited, leaving nothing but fear and chaos in their wake. There was no point in running. Eli knew his land like the back of his hand: the crops, the barn, even the specific way the light filtered through the trees in the evening. This was his home, and he wouldn't let anyone take it from him. The motorcycles roared to a stop just beyond the gate, and as their riders dismounted, Eli noticed their leader, a hulking figure with a scar running across his cheek, step forward. The man carried himself with a swagger, as if he reveled in instilling fear. His gang was quick to follow, their leather jackets glinting in the sunlight, each one echoing a silent threat. Eli straightened his back, taking a deep breath to steady the rising tide of adrenaline. He called out, his voice carrying a firm steadiness that surprised even himself. The leader smirked, a chilling grin that sent a wave of dread coursing through Eli. "This land looks like it could use a little management," he said, gesturing carelessly as if Eli were merely an obstacle in their path. Eli's heart raced, but he stood his ground. "I don't need your kind of help." The laughter that erupted from the group was cruel and mocking, piercing through the afternoon like a blade. "What's an old farmer going to do?" The leader stepped closer, examining Eli with a predatory gaze. In that moment, fear twisted into something else within Eli. A fire ignited deep in his chest. He had spent years cultivating this land, holding on to dreams of family and future. "You can threaten me all you want, but I won't back down," he replied defiantly. The leader's expression darkened, his eyes narrowing like a storm cloud. "You're gonna regret those words," he snapped, as he suddenly lunged forward, fists swinging. Eli moved instinctively, ducking just in time to avoid the heavy punch aimed at him. Adrenaline surged through his veins as he sprang into action. He pushed back with a jab that caught the leader in the stomach, forcing the air out of his lungs. The gang gasped, momentarily taken aback, their bravado flickering precariously. The leader's voice soared above the chaos, rage fueling the air around them as the other bikers moved to close in. Eli didn't even have a moment to catch his breath. Fists flew from all directions like a hailstorm, but he fought back with an intensity driven by years of hard work. He was a farmer, yes, but he was also a guardian. Each blow he delivered was a testament to the life he had built and the love he had for this land. With a swift movement, he struck another biker in the jaw, sending him sprawling backward. The thrill of taking a stand surged through him, pushing back against the fear that threatened to swallow him whole. He was not backing down, not today. The noise of the fight echoed through the ranch, the sound of flesh meeting flesh blending into a chaotic symphony. Eli dodged another blow, adrenaline pumping, and retaliated with a knee to the gut of a biker charging at him. The man doubled over, gasping for air, and Eli felt a surge of purpose. But just as he found his rhythm, the leader charged again, rage coating his every move. Eli barely saw the man coming as he swung a heavy fist, but he sidestepped at the last moment, allowing the blow to miss entirely. Eli could sense the gang's frustration escalating. They had come expecting an easy win. Finding an opening, he delivered a punch that knocked the leader off balance. For a moment, the man looked shaken, his bravado beginning to fade. The other bikers hesitated, glancing at each other as if weighing their options. And then Eli spotted it, a glint near the leader's waist, a knife. Adrenaline blasted through him. Eli shouted, panic igniting in his chest. He could feel the air shift, everything hanging in a precarious balance. But instead of retreating, the leader lunged for him, knife raised high. Eli acted without thinking, instinct kicking in. He'd spent years working the land, digging deep into the soil. He was not about to let this man turn his life into chaos. In a flash, Eli grabbed the leader's wrist, twisting it violently. The knife slipped from his grasp, falling to the ground as Eli pushed the man away, using the leader's own strength against him. The blade tumbled across the dirt, the sound sharp and final. Eli turned to face the now shaky group of bikers, his heart thundering in his chest. He yelled, his voice ringing out with certainty. The gang exchanged shocked glances, uncertainty creeping into their ranks. Eli's defiance had shifted the tide, unveiling their fear, their ego stripped bare. This wasn't just an old man. This was a man who owned his life, his land, and everything he stood for. One of the bikers fumbled backward, scrambling for his bike, panic chasing across his face. He shouted, motivation spilling into chaos. The leader, eyes wild and filled with raw anger, lunged again. But Eli, fueled by courage and years of hard work, was ready. He shouted as he squared his shoulders and charged forward, driving a fist into the man's gut once more. The leader hit the ground hard, groaning as he gasped for air. Seeing their leader down and the tide of emotion turning against them, the remaining gang members finally fled, scrambling onto their motorcycles as fast as their legs could move. The engines roared to life, pouring out a cacophony of noise that filled the air. "Get off my land!" Eli shouted, his voice echoing across the fields, triumph surging through him. The bikers tore away, their bikes kicking up dust that swirled in the wind, leaving behind the chaos and uncertainty. Eli stood alone, heart racing, the adrenaline slowly ebbing from his veins, leaving a mix of victory and exhaustion in its wake. He let out a deep breath, feeling the weight of the world lift as he surveyed his ranch. The crop stood strong, untouched. The barn, with its weathered wood and countless memories, remained steadfast. He had protected it, fought for it, and it would continue to thrive as a testament to his courage. As the sun dipped closer to the horizon, casting long shadows across the land, Eli leaned against the wooden fence. He felt the warm evening breeze brush against his skin, a whisper of reassurance. He had faced the storm today, stood his ground, and won. But beneath the surface, another kind of awareness washed over him. He understood that this wasn't merely a fight for land. It was a fight for identity, heritage, and the people who had shaped his life. Memories of his father flashed in his mind, the lessons learned under the sun, the stories shared over late-night dinners. Eli wiped a bead of sweat from his brow and looked out across the swaying fields. It was the life he loved, worth every ounce of struggle he had just fought through. What if they returned? The thought nagged at his mind, but a wave of resolve washed over him. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he would meet them head-on. He was not just a farmer. He was a guardian of a legacy, and that filled him with strength. With a sense of purpose, he returned to the barn, ready to inspect any damage done during the altercation. As he pushed open the weathered door, the familiar scent of hay and earth met him, and he felt a surge of reassurance. This was his sanctuary, his place of peace amidst any storm. As evening settled gently over Cedar Valley Ranch, Eli took a moment to reflect. He sat on a stool, gazing at the tools hanging on the wall, memories flooding back day after day spent tending to the land, nights watching the stars while dreaming of future harvests. Against all odds, he had stood his ground today, and that realization filled him with a profound sense of pride. He thought of what he had achieved and knew he wouldn't let anyone, not even the motor crew, dictate his life. The crickets began to chirp outside, wrapping him in the soft melodies of the night. Contentment swelled in his chest, a promise of more days to come, more challenges to face, and more victories to claim. Eli took a deep breath, feeling the warmth embrace him like an old friend. He was ready for whatever came next, knowing he would continue to protect his legacy. The sun would rise again tomorrow over Cedar Valley Ranch, and as long as it did, he would remain steadfast, unbroken, undaunted, a strong farmer standing his ground through any storm. The sun hung high in the sky, casting a warm glow over Cedar Valley Ranch as Eli Carter wiped the sweat off his brow with a calloused hand. It was just another day in his life, tending to the fields, where rows of corn swayed gently in the breeze. Eli loved this place. He had worked it for over 20 years, pouring his heart and soul into every inch of soil. But on that peaceful morning, everything changed. The distant growl of engines approached like a thunderstorm rolling over the horizon. Eli's heart raced as he squinted into the distance. A cloud of dust loomed as several motorcycles broke through the haze, their chrome glinting wickedly under the sun. The roar grew louder, an ominous sound that had him instinctively reaching for the shovel resting against the barn. His mind raced. The motor crew. He had heard the stories, rumors of their ruthless tactics and how they claimed territory as if it were their birthright. They wreaked havoc wherever they went, leaving nothing but fear in their wake, and now they had come to his doorstep. Eli stood tall, resolving to protect what was his. This land meant everything to him. As the motorcycles rumbled to a halt, the gang began to dismount, hardened faces cloaked in leather, resembling wolves descending upon an unsuspecting sheep. The leader, a massive man with a scar down his cheek, stepped forward, smirking as he approached. "Well, well," he growled. "Looks like we found ourselves an old farmer. What are you gonna do, Grandpa?" Eli's heart pounded, yet he held his ground. The gang erupted in laughter, their amusement echoing against the backdrop of the vast, empty fields. Another biker sneered, stepping closer, their confidence radiating like a dark cloud looming overhead. But Eli felt something shift inside him, a fire igniting born from years of hard work and a love for this land. "You think I'm afraid?" The leader's eyes darkened. "You've got guts, I'll give you that," he snarled. Then, in a flash, the leader lunged for Eli, fist flying towards him. Instinct kicked in, and Eli ducked just in time, feeling the air swoosh past him. Adrenaline surged, propelling him into motion. He stepped to the side and landed a solid jab to the man's midsection that sent shockwaves through the air. The gang gasped, momentarily halted by the unexpected resistance. Eli felt a surge of adrenaline rush through him. He wasn't backing down. The leader shouted, scrambling back to his feet, fury written all over his face as he rallied his gang. Chaos erupted. Fists flew as the gang closed in on him. But Eli was fueled by love for his land, a bond forged in sweat, toil, and years steeped in resilience. He ducked under a swinging punch, retaliating with a strike to a biker's jaw, feeling the satisfying thud vibrate through his fist. As he moved like a dancer through the fray, dodging blows and delivering his own, something primal rose within him. This was not just a fight for his land, it was a fight for his identity. Each punch he threw was not just a defense but a declaration. But amidst the chaos, Eli felt a rush of panic as he caught sight of the leader, now advancing once again, fury etched into every line on his face. The man was unpredictable, a raging bull looking for a target. Eli's focus sharpened, his heart raced faster than ever before. Suddenly, the leader tackled him to the ground, a weight that pinned him down like an anchor. For a moment, Eli felt the tide of fear clawing at his insides, but he refused to give in. Summoning every ounce of strength, he pushed back, flipping the man over and springing to his feet. Eli shouted, his voice echoing with fierce authority, but the leader wasn't done yet. He sprang back up with a defiant growl, lunging toward Eli once more. This time, a glint of metal caught Eli's eye, a knife. Instinctively, he dodged as the blade sliced through the air, narrowly missing him. Eli bellowed, adrenaline now coursing through every fiber of his being. In that split second, everything became clearer. Eli was no mere farmer. He was a protector, a warrior forged by the sweat of his brow and the blood of his ancestors who had walked this land before him. With a fierce determination, Eli lunged, grabbing the leader's wrist, twisting it until he forced the knife from his hand. It clattered to the ground, and with that, Eli felt a surge of triumph. He shouted, holding the leader's wrist firmly, "This is my land." The remaining bikers paused, a flicker of uncertainty crossing their faces. They had come expecting an easy target, but Eli had risen up against them with an unwavering spirit. Fear spread through the gang's ranks, and one of the members dashed backward, scrambling for his bike. The leader, now filled with rage and confusion, attempted to break free, but Eli's grip was ironclad. "You want to fight?" He tightened his hold, forcing the leader to submit to the power of the moment. Cowardice gripped the gang. One by one, they turned and retreated, scrambling onto their motorcycles, their laughter now replaced by frightened yells. The air turned electric as they revved their engines, desperate to escape the confrontation. Eli shouted one final time, watching as they sped off into the distance, the dust trailing behind them like the remnants of a forgotten nightmare. As the last roar of the motorcycles faded, a deep silence enveloped the ranch. Eli stood there, heart pounding in his chest, sweat dripping down his brow. He had defended his land, bewildered by the depth of strength he didn't know he possessed. But the relief didn't last. What if they returned? The thought knotted his stomach. This wasn't just about a confrontation. It was about the future, the uncertainties that loomed like storm clouds on the horizon. Eli turned to his fields, the setting sun painting them in warm hues. He understood that today's victory came at a price, and the battle was hardly over. As darkness descended, he turned back towards the barn, ready to check for any damage the gang had caused. With a deep breath, he laid his hand on the barn door, pausing for a moment to collect himself. Inside, the familiar scent of hay and wood wrapped around him like a warm embrace. The barn always felt like home, a fortress amidst the chaos of the world. Eli stepped inside, taking stock of his belongings, trying to shake off the tension from the fight. But as he moved deeper into the barn, he froze. His heart stopped. There on the wall were crude drawings, vandalism etched deep into the wooden planks. Eli felt a cold sweat break on his brow. This was more than just a warning, it was a declaration of war. They would be back. He knew it in his bones. He stepped back, heart racing as he processed the weight of it. Today had been a battle, yes, but it was merely a prelude to something much larger, something darker looming just beyond the horizon. Eli clenched his fists, determination blazing within him. Whatever came next, he would be ready. He had faced the storm today and refused to be swept away. As he exited the barn, the moon hung low, a stark reminder that the night was only beginning and the true fight lay ahead.